here is a dose of reality. The president does not have the legal power to alter state-level election laws. And now, Oregon, the state that conducts all of its elections by mail, is at the center of this debate. Secretary of State Tobias Reed is now speaking out in a new MSNBC op-ed, detailing how his state will not give up voting by mail easily, writing in part, under mail-in voting, Oregon has elected Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and voters from across the political spectrum love it. That Democratic Secretary of State, Tobias Reed, joins us now. Secretary Reed, thank you for being here tonight. So let's begin right there with the vote mail system in your state, which has been successful for decades now. What is your response to Trump's claims, his attacks, and this idea that this system is fraudulent?
Thanks for having me on. I think it is clear that the president is trying to avoid accountability. He does not want to have to answer for what his administration is and isn't doing. The fact is exactly as you reported it. Oregon has been doing this for decades. We were the first state in the country to do it, and we did it because it works. We get high turnout among the leaders in the country. We get low cost. We get high security. So, as you also said, the president does not have the authority to do this. The Constitution is very clear that states have the responsibility of deciding how they run elections, and we are going to defend that right. We are going to make sure that Oregonians have the opportunity to continue holding politicians accountable just as they choose to do it.
Can I ask you, Mr. Secretary, what power does the president have to impact this? He says he wants to sign an executive order that would end voting by mail. But as Antonio was saying in the setup, that's not within his power, executive powers. States in this country are run and determined on a state-by-state level. But just kind of give us a sense of what you're preparing for, what you're anticipating, what you as Secretary of State can do to prevent this attempted takeover from the president, or overreach, if you will, from the president.
You're 100% right. Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution spells it out explicitly. If Congress wanted to have that conversation, they could, but we are prepared to remind people of what we're talking about here. This is a bipartisan issue. It spans the entire country. Oregonians have been electing Republicans, Democrats, and independents for decades, and it's not even in the Republicans' electoral interest. Think about the people who are most likely to use mail-in voting. They are people who live a long distance from an election center. They're more likely to be voting conservatively. And mail-in election does not favor any party at all. So if the president signs another executive order, we'll take him to court with the Oregon Attorney General, just as we have done with his first unconstitutional and illegal executive order when it comes to elections.
Secretary, I want to play some footage of President Trump with Fox News' Sean Hannity, and he shares some insight on who has been influencing his views on mail-in voting.
Vladimir Putin said something, one of the most interesting things. He said your election was rigged because you have mail-in voting. Vladimir Putin, smart guy, said you can't have an honest election with mail-in voting.
So what do you make of Vladimir Putin being held up as someone you want to consult on your free and fair elections?
Well, again, I think this is all part of the same trend of trying to avoid accountability. I'm trying not to have to answer for what's going on. But if the president is taking election advice from Vladimir Putin, a person we know who has successfully rigged elections in his own country, I feel like that's pretty good evidence for us that this is something we want to defend. And that's what we're going to do in Oregon.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was taken back a little bit by Vladimir Putin giving the president advice on mail-in ballots. Does he know how to rig mail-in balloting? That's why he was telling him that it's not a good idea. But I want to kind of widen this out a little bit, because it seems to me, Mr. Secretary, that this is part of a much broader attempt by the GOP to kind of roll back voting rights. Of course, obviously, there's a big focus on Texas this week, I believe, in Tarrant County, cut more than 100 polling sites. There is a concerted effort to make voting harder in this country by the GOP. If the Democratic Party does not respond on a national level with a national call to action, are these individual measures that states like yours and others do going to be enough in the face of what the big Republican Party is doing countrywide?
Well, I think that's up to every individual voter. What we know is that voting is about holding politicians accountable. And in Oregon, we have a strong position that we are better when more people are participating. That's why we try to make it convenient for people. This meets people where they are, in their living rooms, around their kitchen table. And every state has the opportunity to make that successful. We know that happens in Oregon, and we've seen it across the country. More people are moving our direction, and we want to be a strong example for that and help more states make it more convenient for eligible people to hold politicians accountable.
All right, Oregon Secretary of State Tobias Reed, sir, thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much.